Thank you for waiting for us. And I'm sorry, I should explain that I'm not Deepa Mehta or Salman Rushdie. This, as you know, is Rahul Bose. And there's been a small change in the program because the panel has changed so frequently. David Hamilton's not well. Ms. Mehta wasn't able to make it. And as you know, Salman Rushdie was disinvited by the special branch, which is a pity. Years ago, as a student in the city, I went to one of the famous College Street bookstalls to buy a copy of Midnight's Children. And the bookseller looked at me and he said, "You can't have it." And I said, I have enough money. And I pulled out 1 rupee coins to demonstrate that I was actually for once solvent. And he said, "No, you have to read this first." And he gave me Grimus, Rushdie's first novel, made me read it, and then the next week took a little exam, and then having ascertained that I was worthy, reluctantly handed over a battered second-hand copy of Midnight's Children. I hope someday that the city will be able to welcome him rather better. Rahul Bose will take questions about censorship, since both the films that he's involved with have run into these issues, but we'll do that towards the end of the session. And what we're going to talk about today is just books, films, and the making of Midnight's Children. And I was wondering whether we could start by talking about your history of reading and your history of watching cinema, both of them both before you became an actor and after. Did you have a stronger preference on one side or the other?
I wish I could say, like all highly successful Hindi movie actors, that I don't read and I don't watch cinema. But since I'm not, obviously I do read and I do watch movies. I think, Nilanjana, what happens is that you grow up with a certain imagination that is governed by the school you go to, or the kind of socio-cultural milieu you belong to. And so your reading choices are obvious. So for me, they were obviously the kind of choices that anybody of my ilk would make, which would be, largely American writers, largely Western writers writing about topics that I had no clue. But they were still wonderful. I mean, there was the time of Philip Roth, and I think J. McInerney was writing, and so I grew up in the 80s with all that stuff. And so were my movies. I mean, I think, like, I don't know how things are right now, but I grew up watching the entire De Niro oeuvre, the entire Nicholson oeuvre, the entire Pacino oeuvre, thinking that that was cinema. And then in college, when I didn't attend 3 years of college, so I just sat and watched movies and read books. That is when I saw the Opoo trilogy. Yes, I think I saw Ghatak only after that. And I just saw the trilogy, and it was on video. Are you from the video era?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Just about the videotapes.
So it was video cassettes. At that time, then the reading began to become, and even the film viewing began to become very much what is known as world cinema today. Whether it was Buñuel, or whether it was Ray, or whether it was Japanese, say Kurosawa, or whether it it was all of that, and so the reading. Then it was Murakami and Amitav Ghosh, and there was some of the British writers who one hadn't, not the obvious ones. So all of that began to slowly come into the reading.
That's one of the things that strikes me whenever we are talking about adaptations, which is that the divide between the book and film and whether one is better than the other, that seems to exist largely in the mind of critics, because when you're actually reading or watching, at some point you're caught up with the story, right? Much more than anything else. And I wanted to ask, after you became an actor, after you started acting on stage and on screen, did that change for you? When you looked at books, is it impossible for you to open them up and just read the story? Do you look at them and think, I want this part?
Well, I think that I was always the kind of person who imagined stories visually. So even when I would, as a teenager, narrate the story of how I embarrassed myself in a restaurant, it would always take the form of a movie. And I remember my brother-in-law saying to me that you always speak as if you're in the middle of some movie, And so I guess my imagination was fairly cinematic, and I didn't intend it to be that way, but maybe I was a product of the time. But as far as books are concerned, reading a book then and reading a book now and considering its cinematic possibilities, I don't think I really have, no, I don't think I really have changed that much. I've always looked at it visually. I've always made a series of visual pictures, but I do that with numbers also. I don't remember numbers. I make that into a picture. Yeah.
And you worked with 3 directors on 3 completely different books. English August, which is Upamanyu Chatterjee's, The Japanese Wife, which was made into a movie by Aparna Sen, and now Midnight's Children. Did you find that they approached books very differently when they converted them into, put them onto the screen? You can be tactful here if you want.
Sorry?
You can be tactful here if you want.
I can be?
Tactful.
Tactful? No. I was just thinking how strange it is that all 3 filmmakers closely collaborated with the writers. Whereas I'm going to be making Moth Smoke, hopefully, at the end of this year. And Mohsen and I have never collaborated. And as Salman says, there are 2 ways to do books into films. One is a very close collaboration, Aparna and Kunal. Kunal wrote The Japanese Wife, which was originally a short story called Kites. And Aparna began to talk to him about the possibility of making this into a movie, and they're very, very close friends till today. Close collaborators too at the time. Similarly with Midnight's Children. And also I know that Upamanyu and Dave Benegal, the director of English August, worked very closely on English August when Dave had conceived of it as a film. But it needn't have to be. As Salman said, and as we all know, there are, either you just take a novel and say, I'm going to capture the spirit and a certain through line. Boy meets girl, fall in love, boy's family hates girl's family, they've been fighting, they go away, they run away, tragedy ensues, girl dies, Romeo and Juliet. You don't worry about anything else. So you just look for the through line when you're converting a novel into a film, and then you add whatever you feel will add to the cinematics of that through line, but you don't bother about exploring all 7 levels. So, but in these 3 cases, they were all very closely collaborative processes between the writer and the director.
And completely different films, though. Some of them are more faithful to the book. Some give themselves the freedom to experiment to a large extent.
I think it's possibly more dangerous making a very good book into a film because of the nature of the medium. You're not going to satisfy everyone. It's perhaps a safer bet to take a mediocre book and make it into a movie, because then you can actually do things to it. But in the case of The Japanese Wife, it was a short story. So it didn't have all the texture and all the density that a full-blown novel would have. So I think Aparna in that respect had a easier time in terms of living up to the text.
And I would imagine that both Moth Smoke and Midnight's Children, that way they're so large and so detailed that they would be more of a challenge. But when you actually get into a role, do you go back to the book at all, or is there a point at which you detach from reading the original book and just stick with the screenplay?
Oh no.
No.
I always go back to the book because the book is a product of 5 or 10 or 4 or 6 years of, the writer has lived through, you can hear each character. The writer must have inhabited 7 or 8 different characters. It must have been physically and emotionally exhausting. But they all, if it's a good book, they ring true. And so to actually look at those characters, re-look at them, you go back to the book. Because the screenplay will have the smell and the whiff and the spirit of the novel. But all the work that's been done has been done by the writer in the book. So whenever I have a book to go back to, it might even be a scene that is not in the final film or in the final script of the film. It might be something not. And so that could help you sometimes not sometimes, it will help you in coloring the spaces that the film, the gaps in the film, because the film can't keep telling you everything that happened to the guy all the time.
With Midnight's Children, in fact, you tried out twice, didn't you? I mean, you tried out for the role of Salim, and then as we saw, you ended later, many years later, with the role of Zulfikar.
Yeah, the moral of the story is that if you wait a long time, you will be relegated from the lead role to a bit role. And if you wait even longer, then you'll be relegated to the role of the audience.
Would you like?
Which is a lovely role, by the way. It's an astoundingly important role. Whew.
But you auditioned.
In these, intolerant times, the audience, yeah.
And you auditioned first 17 years ago. Was that 17 years ago? Was that right?
Yeah. So it was a 5-part mini-series, which almost seemed like a better idea at the time to take a book like Midnight's Children and convert it into a mini-series. And apparently, Salman was the final arbiter for the role of for who would play Salim Sinai, and he looked at 142 actors and finally chose me. And I still remember when it was a BBC series, and somebody from the BBC called and said to me late at night, my time, but evening their time, that they would like me to play Salim. And I remember screaming into the phone because it's still one of the treasured roles for an Indian actor. You don't get many roles in world literature today for us to do. And I was screaming into the phone, I was so thrilled. And of course, then it all went south after that with the, okay, some can laugh. It went south because of the fact that there was a problem shooting it here. Then it was supposed to be done in Sri Lanka. And then we heard that the Saudi government had actually stepped in and voiced objections and blah, 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 and the whole thing just unraveled. So that's the time I actually reread Midnight's Children. I had read it once as a reader. And then I read it once for the mini-series. And I was living with the book and then picked it up again because General Zulfi is somebody I hadn't really focused on last time around.
I've been meaning to ask this, but was it as iconic for you, the book, as it was for many of us in our generation, Midnight's Children?
Yeah.
The first time you read it, how old were you?
I just saw it as, the first thing, I didn't know who the guy was. I just said, this guy really loves this country. He loves this, the country, the city, his childhood. And I was having dinner with Salman 3 days ago, and he said he started writing Midnight's Children, which he even said yesterday at a session, as a story of his childhood. Located specifically in Breach Candy and those, and he said, of course, it became something bigger.
And I mean, it expanded outwards. It became something like the history of this country as well. There was Bangladesh there, you had a bit of Pakistan, you had the emergency years, which was exceptionally moving actually. Watching the film for the first time in Delhi recently, that particular section was striking because we haven't seen the emergency in film at all. But since you've already given us a little bit of General Zulfikar, I was wondering, could I persuade you to read just a little bit of Salim Sinai?
Oh yeah, with pleasure.
This is this isn't from the screenplay for this movie. This was from Salman Rushdie's original TV adaptation.
He actually gave me this.
Never got done.
This is the script, right?
Yes.
And I was so thrilled because the intro to this book, he mentions that I was cast in it. And then I lost this copy. I lost my copy of this.
I'll photostat it for you. I can't promise to give it to you, but from here to here.
Okay.
And
sure.
just Salim's voice.
So that's Salim. It says voiceover. I was born in the city of Bombay, once upon a time. No, that won't do. There's no getting away from the date. I was born in Dr. Narlikar's nursing home on August the 15th, 1947. And the time matters too. Well then, at night, on the stroke of midnight, as a matter of fact. Clock hands joined palms in respectful greeting as I came. Oh, spell it out, spell it out. At the precise instant of India's arrival at independence, I tumbled forth into the world. I wasn't the only one either. All over India, in that midnight hour, children were born who were also children of the time. Fathered, you understand, by history. It can happen, especially in a country which is itself a sort of dream.
At this point, we could open it up to the audience if anyone wants to ask questions about the film particularly, and then we could come back to the conversation. Is there anyone who has a question? Otherwise, we'll continue. There's one, the gentleman in the red sweater at the middle. Would you have a mic? And the lady out here. We'll just take 2 or 3 questions and then get back to the conversation so that it's a little less like one person relentlessly quizzing somebody who can't actually escape until I say so.
Hi, since we haven't seen the film, very intrigued about how has Deepa Mehta handled the magic realist portions, like for instance Salim's nose and all of that.
Well, Salim's nose is not magic realist, it's actually there, so that's prosthetics.
His sense of smell, the sequences in the
I think
slum and all of that.
I'll be giving the game away, but cinema has certain tools. Cinema has certain tools which are to do with, without getting into fancy CG, you can have a medley of voices. You can have dissolving many faces one over the other. You can have a different treatment for a certain character on the screen versus another, like Casper and the Ghost, or you get my point. So I think that, it's not that she's invented a new device, but she has used all the devices that have been used in the past, very interestingly, very interestingly.
You should really see the film. The lady in the front row.
Why make a film of a novel such as Midnight's Children? It doesn't seem to have a very sort of linear structure to it, and I would have thought that it would be a very difficult sort of task to do. To me, the novel does not follow a linear sort of stream of consciousness. It's very.
But a stream of consciousness is not linear.
It doesn't follow a certain. I mean, the events in the book are structured around history, the history of the subcontinent. But
you're saying that it would be a difficult book to film, in your opinion, because
it's not
too big?
necessarily a linear sort of story. To me, it's very much about the writer's memory of his own sort of life, and it's based on his own sort of memory of certain events
That's an
within
opinion,
his
that's
own
fine.
life. And
But why would you think that cinema would be unable to capture this?
no, I don't think that cinema would be unable to capture it. I think that it's an extremely intimate, personal, and satirical and stylistic sort of
Okay, thanks so much.
account. So
I think one of the things that you're articulating is something a lot of people felt about Midnight's Children. And coincidentally, there's several books that have come to the screen recently that are considered extremely difficult books to film, unfilmable. Somebody was talking about Life of Pi, where years back when Jan Martin came out with that book, people looked at it and said, it'll never translate on screen. And I watched it recently, Ang Lee's version, and it translated beautifully. It translated as though it had been made for the screen. I'm actually not an adaptations purist. I don't know whether you are.
Purist?
There's a certain kind of conversation about book to film adaptations. It's always the story of somebody walking out and saying that wasn't as good as the book. And to me,
it missed out this detail, and what about this character,
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
yeah, I'm assuming that since you've acted in so many of these, you're actually an enthusiast for the opposite point of view.
Yeah, I mean, and also having co-written Moth Smoke, we've been very delightfully disrespectful to the book. I mean, no, Mohsen loves the script. He understands that it's a different creature. Thank you very much. Now it's our turn, kind of thing. And if we try and stick to what the book says, then we might as well go back to rewriting Moth Smoke, which is, you can't make it better than it is. It's so wonderful. So, yeah, I'm definitely on your side.
Well, two questions I wanted to ask, and take them in whichever order you want to. One was about walking into Zulfikar's skin after you'd actually spent time with Salim Sinai. And the other had to do much more about turning screenwriter yourself. Because that was inevitable at some point of time, right?
Okay, so I have played General Zulfi part out of sentimentality to the whole Midnight's Children becoming a movie event. I've never played anything but the lead in my life, and I would never do this again for any other kind of script. But I have done it this time because Salman's book is, to be a part of that is something that I didn't want to miss out on. But there was a great awesome cast. And there was Deepa Mehta. And so there was these little carrots also. Not that she dangled them in front of me, I saw them myself. To play somebody from 25 to 55 was something I'd never done before. Japanese wife stopped at about 45, 47. And to sort of get your head shaved in parts to give that balding feel and that papery makeup, and it was good fun to do. But more important, to actually try and use all the tools I do for my leads in an 11-minute role was, now I understand, it's even more important, because you just feel, what the hell, I just get onto the set, I have a tiny role, I just pick up the money, have a couple of beers in the evening, finish my filming and just get out of there, parachute in and parachute out. But your sense of shame is the same, whether you're there for 11 minutes and you're bad, or you're there for the whole film and you're bad. So I really had to work very hard. I didn't ever think of Salim, the transition. I kept seeing Salim develop during the workshop, because Satya is playing Salim, and a part of me would feel like crying. And a part of me was just curious to see what he would be doing, and a part of me was biting my tongue not to stand in judgment of, the way he's, we're all different people. So that, even now, it still continues, because I was breathing that role for a few months. But Zulfi is somebody I loved inhabiting. He's the only remotely bad person in the book. So it was fun to play Zulfi. You had a second question?
Well, the second question was much more, Motsmok was Mohsin Hamid's first book, and how many people have read it here? Okay, in that case I'm not going to talk about it that much, but you have some sense in that case of how rewarding it would be to translate it into film, and how difficult at the same time. You can't do it by staying faithful to the text, right?
When I say I co-wrote Motsmok, I co-wrote it to about 15%. It's been brilliantly written by a friend of mine, Nisar Modi in America, but he took some things from me, he did the whole thing, and then I gave back some things to him. But I did write The Whisperers, for example, but as an adaptation, I think the one thing that I kept telling Nisar, who's a writer in the American style, Nilanjana, they write very astringently. American screenplay writers write very clean, astringent. There's no atmospherics, no cinematics. Boy comes in, sits down on chair and starts to cry. Boy comes in, sits down on Victorian chair. The smell of burnt roses infuses and Indians tend to overwrite when they come to screenplay. The camera goes very close to his eye. No, we don't want to see that. You do that later. But I think that it was clean. He just took it and he went clean into the through line. And I said, Nisar, this is like so stripped down to the bone, this like a skeleton. Let's put some flesh back on it. So that's what the cinematics, to give readers, funders an idea of what this film will breathe and smell and look like, is I think what I put back.
Now that you're moving into these different areas, are there books, particularly ones written by Indian authors, that you want to see up on screen, or that you think you'd like to act in or direct yourself?
Well, there's this one book that has been getting terrific reviews, and some of my friends have read it. I don't know whether you've read it. It's called The Wildings. And I'm just thinking that I can't find who the writer is. I'm looking for the writer. And I'm trying to see, maybe, because we have a lot of cats in our society, some human and some not. Just wondering who to cast for the role of these cats. I haven't read the book myself, but I'm going to. And I want to take a shot at that. But, I don't know how expensive the rights are going to be, so we'll have to see.
Cast of 1,000 News. Thank you so much for that. We should move back into the audience now, because I think we are running low on time since this is the last session of the day. But just before that, are you very disappointed that Deepa Mehta couldn't come and that Salman Rushdie is not welcome in the city?
No. To be disappointed, you have to be appointed. To be disillusioned, you have to be illusioned. And I don't have any illusions. Does it mean that I'm enervated and disheartened and won't fight the fight against cultural intolerance? Of course not. Both you and I will continue to do what we do outside of our art, and we will fight to the last breath. But am I disappointed? Honestly not. I mean, because I don't think that's Calcutta. I don't think the whole of Calcutta is up in arms about this. I think it's just, it becomes very, and honestly I don't know who the vested interests are, but it is vested interests. It'll always be 1% of the population that will control the sort of the narrative. It's happened through history, through time. We just have to keep fighting, putting your shoulder to the wheel, standing obdurately. But disappointed? No, I mean, it's like people saying, are you nervous about the release of your film? Why, what? I mean, I'll act badly, I'll forget my lines. What should I do, It's there. So, I'm not disappointed, but yes, I definitely am disturbed that this is part of a stitching together of stuff that's happening over the last 2 decades, no?
It is definitely. And what's happening with the other film that you're involved with, Vishwarupan?
I don't have a release for a year, and then I have 2 films releasing, and they're both coming up on the same day. So I think now I'm going to become a superstar, obviously. There's nobody else around who has 2 films on that day. And then both those films just start gathering the storm, and I'm like, will anybody even see the movie? Everybody's talking about it. Oh, Vishwarupam, yeah. But we didn't see you. We didn't see the film. Or Midnight Children. Yeah. What do I say about Vishwarupam? It's a film about, it's an action film, guys. It's an action film about a Muslim raw agent trying to save the world and a Muslim madman he's in Al-Qaeda. So what is there to say? On the contrary, it probably says that people from the same religion can be good and evil, and therefore religion has got nothing to do with it. So I don't even think Mr. Hassan is trying to make any kind of politico-religious point here. He's making an action film. And we have seen over so many films that the whole using religion for violence. Okay, whether it's, I'm having these wonderful brain funks, those fights between the big religious fights of the 10th and 11th century. Crusades, thank you so much. Mala, is that you? Yeah, lovely. I always rely on Mala. So Crusades, or whether it's now, it's a done deal. You know that it's going to be, that people are going to conflate, religion with this kind of terroristic violence. And so that's what it's got nothing to do with. Inadvertently, has he hurt someone's feelings? Who knows? Inadvertently, I might be hurting someone's feelings right now because I'm wearing leather. I mean, So what are you going to do?
Thank you so much. We're going to take this into the audience now for the last 10 minutes. Mala, how much time do we have? 15 minutes, all right. We've taken a question from here, so we'll just go elsewhere.
But this Nazi lighting is, by the way, I can't see anything. It's like we're being interrogated. Okay. I feel like apologizing right now.
Instead of raising your hands, could you just jump up and down until we have a little visibility?
Okay, so now they're dimming it and increasing it in this real torture. Where were you?
There's a lady in the second row, I think. If anybody is off to the side, seriously, try and come out in front because we really can't see you. Thank you.
Hi, since you're here and Deepa couldn't come, do you bring a message from Midnight's Children team?
Tickets are available. It's a movie, it's releasing, it's a wonderful book. Come and see the film, criticize it, love it. I mean, come on guys, at the end of the day, that's what we all walk into darkened halls and get. Reserve your fight for before and after that, no?
Okay, fine, the lady in the front row.
So what kind of references were you given for the role of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto? What were the sort of references?
First of all, he's General Zulfikar. It's got nothing to do with Bhutto. So it's a thing that a lot of people. Also in the book, my character has got nothing to do with what you finally see at the end of the film when he signs the surrender agreement with General Arora on the Bangladesh war. It was actually General Niazi, and he's in the book too. But in the movie, it's the same character, General Zulfikar, who grows into the surrendering Pakistani general of 1971. Actually, what I did was I read the script, read the book, and decided to create a Zulfi for myself based on the dots. I connected the dots. Then Deepa and I figured finally that he was deeply misogynistic, insecure. He might have been a closet or an open, maybe he treated women very cruelly. He loved authority, people he loved to be bossed over. He loved to boss over. He would betray friends to get a step up. So we created a whole biography, and I always do that. It's called the biography method, but I always start from zero to the day he starts filming, to the age he was. So I went through his love lives, his music, his food, everything. So we created that. She didn't give me any reference points in terms of, I want you to model yourself on X, because it's very helpful. Sometimes when people say, that's who I want you to model yourself on, and immediately you get so many cues. She didn't do that.
Very different from the way you played August in English August, yes? Was this very different from the way you played August in English August? Agastya?
See, Nilanjana, English August, Agastya was so close to me at the time. Shallow and urban at the time. But, a few jokes and a bit of wry humor and, masturbation, which I know nothing about, and smoking dope, which I genuinely know very little about. Agastya was kind of easy. But Zulfi wasn't. I mean, Zulfi wasn't easy because he could so easily be a caricature. But when you see Zulfi in this film, through, thanks to Deepa, she's put in stuff that's not in the book. And for Zulfi, who's an 11-minute role, and she couldn't afford to because she cut an hour from this film. But she did. And I remember going to her once and saying that I see Zulfi, you're never going to shoot this, but I just see Zulfi quiet. I don't know why. I feel we are missing something in Zulfi if we don't see him quiet. And she came back to me a week or 3 or 4 days later and said, I've written this scene. I said, Deepa, it'll never make the final cut. You have so many things to do, so many actors. She said, no, let's shoot it. So I said, fine. And she wrote something very beautiful. Have you seen the film? It's the last scene of Zulfi's, when he's waiting before he surrenders. He's waiting in that room alone. And so I think, that
Yes, it's remarkable, to have a book like this, which both when Deepa speaks about it and when you speak about it, what comes through is the immense love that you have for this book in particular. I think that's a good note on which to close, unless anybody else has. Okay, there's a question at the back. Sorry. The mic's just coming to you.
I would like to know how much of you do you cross-refer when preparing for the role? If you go back to when my first impression of Rahul Bose is Rahul Bose as Pawbon in Ashok Banker's A Mouthful of Sky.
Remind me to kill you after this. I'm slowly killing all the people who saw Mouthful of Sky, so there's no history of it. But anyway, please finish your question.
So
we live in intolerant
going right
times.
back to there, and now coming a full circle here, and everything else in between. Rahul Bose, the rugby player. How much of you do you cross-refer when you prepare yourself for a project?
Let us say the central color of Zulfi is red. Let us say the dominating characteristic of Zulfi is pompous, cruel. Okay? Something, a combination of this. You try and find that in yourself. Maybe you've just been that way when you're at work. Or maybe you're that way, I don't know. And if you can't find it within yourself, then there's a bit of a problem. You have to find, that's why they say that actors should live, so that they can have little slivers of different Rahuls that they can pick one from and explode that into an entire character. But if I don't find it, with Zulfi it's very difficult to find this. I don't think I've ever been cruel in that respect. Then you look at somebody very close to you who has shades of that. And that's when I found it. who has shades of that, and it's almost sexually exciting for this person to wield that kind of power. Couple that with his basic sense of sexual inadequateness. Oh, sorry, I forgot. There is something that I had with Zulfi, one commonality.
Do you want to talk about this?
Has the city lost its sense of humor or what? Or maybe you're all saying, yeah, of course, we can see that. Damn, the joke falls flat. Come on, Rahul, we know you're sexually inadequate. All of us know, in fact. So then you look at somebody very close and, quietly and shadily and slimily keep studying them.
He may be available for dating purposes, judging by that last part of the conversation. And thank you all for being such good
I
sport.
will say one thing about, just 1 second, I'm sorry. Salman spoke about this yesterday, so I just thought I'll just put it on. So very nice he said. He said that, as I said before, he wrote this to be a kind of a memoir of his childhood, to relive those days, and it became something bigger. And then it became this book, and it became this booker, then this booker of bookers, and he traveled the world, and he owes so much of his success to this book, he was saying. And then it's become a movie, and he's written the screenplay, he's done the voiceover, he's worked on the edit with, or rather, conferred on the edit with Deepa, been for the world premiere, and he said he wanted to close the circle by coming to Bombay, to close the circle on when he started writing this novel. And I'm sure he would say the same thing if he was here today. Calcutta or no Calcutta, I do think that we have to show him the grace to close the circle. Thank you.